So let me go ahead and so you guys kind of got an understanding of where we're at. So before I get into aquaponics, what I wanted to talk about as I move this out of the way, as I get into aquaponics, I want to talk about growing in the ground. You know, we live in Florida. We're in Florida, and growing in Florida is not for the faint of heart. The dirt. Okay, when people come to Florida, at least on vacation, they think the beach. Man, I want to go to the beach. Well, you're growing food at the beach. Picture at the beach, putting a row in the ground and putting seeds in. I mean, what do I mean by that? There's very little to no very little nutrient value to the soil here in Florida. You guys with me? There is some, but very little. You can't just go out to your backyard and grow a row of cucumbers. In Florida, growing in the ground is not for the faint of heart. Fact. Okay? So that's why I really like aquaponics a lot, but I do grow in the ground. And I actually use a method, and I'm gonna get Justin to help me out. Justin, if you could get the cardboard for me first. When I do grow in the ground, I grow with a method called the Back to Eden gardening method, or lasagna, or it's called lasagna gardening, or it's called no-till gardening. Okay, what does that mean? Well, pretend like we were in your yard right now and you had grass and you said, man, I want to grow a vegetable row. I want to grow a row of vegetables. Well, the first thing you got to do is get rid of the grass. Well, old school days, or people that don't really know, they would just spray it and kill it with something like Roundup. Well, Roundup was labeled a carcinogen. Roundup causes cancer. But if you remember, just like the tobacco industry, for decades, they said it didn't. Because when you get at the highest levels, it's about money. It really is. So that's why I encourage everybody to do your own research. Everybody should do your own research and figure out what you want. I always joke and say, if someone wants to use Roundup, you can drink a whole glass in the morning and drink the whole thing. You can do whatever you want. Now, I won't, but you can. Are you guys with me? So now we're talking about no-till gardening. So if you would get those, the soil and the mulch. Okay, so what do we do? So now we are going to grow in our yard. So we'll just put these right here. You just sit right there. It's Justin to help me. So first thing you got to do is you have to get rid of the grass. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We use cardboard. Why do people till, though? They till because they want to soften the soil. They want to loosen everything up. They want to kill the grass, and they till it up. Well, the problem is there's more disadvantages to tilling because you're messing up the ecosystem. Plus, there's thousands of incubated weed seeds and stuff in there. And as soon as you turn them up and they get sunlight, all of a sudden you get all these weeds and crazy things growing. And so what we do is we use a no-till gardening method. So the first thing we do is we put a row of cardboard down on the grass. What does that do? Well, it's going to smother the grass. When it smothers the grass is going to do what? It's going to die. Well, when the grass dies, it's really a good thing because you create like a microorganism highway. Are you guys with me? So now the cardboard doesn't look that great right now, but it's down on the ground. So then the next thing I do, I'll get it, is we put down a row of phenomenal organic. Look at this. Look at this, guys. This is epic. I mean, the great news, I'm in Florida, and this is the type of soil I got. This is what you want. Worms. This is amazing, okay? So now I put down, look at this. Okay, this is really good stuff here. Okay, so now I put down the soil, and I make a row. Now, we do USDA certified organic composted soil. I actually sell it by the truckload, dump truckload, everything in the bags. I have it. And so you got to start with the right stuff. You can't just throw some type of dirt down here. But even though this is 100% organic composted soil, it needs more. I use a lot of things, but one of the things I really like is trace minerals. I use trace minerals. One of my secret sauces is kelp. I really like kelp. And then obviously we have a compost bin. We have chickens, we have fish waste, we have a lot of things. So you need to make sure your soil has a great nutrient base. Are you guys with me? And then what's going to happen to the cardboard? It's going to take about 2 months for it to decompose. It's going to disappear, and it's also going to loosen up the ground underneath it. So now I have a row of soil. Then the next thing I do is I either plant plugs, like if I could see this tray. Come on over here, Israel. This tray is starters. We call them starters. Actually, it's pretty cool. These came out of my aquaponics system. I mean, you want to start some really cool stuff. Aquaponics is great. But you don't have to have starters. I could just put seeds in the ground here. But the great thing about starters are, you know, they started and they're great. Now, this is Malabar spinach. A lot of people have never even heard of it. We grow a lot of stuff here. And we're in Plant City, and we grow a lot of stuff here that people don't even know exists, like longevity spinach, Malabar spinach. Because people say you can't grow in the summer. Well, I do. I grow all summer long, always have. So you can. Now, you might not be able to grow some things in the summer, but we grow. Thank you. So now here, I'll tell you what, Israel, you could just do this while I talk. Israel's going to plant these, and as we plant these, we do, made the row maybe a little too big, but we do what's called a zigzag pattern. Now, once again, you can do whatever you want, but I grow things a little closer together than most people. I'm not saying you need to do that, because if you study charts, it always tells you how far to put things apart. But if you don't have a big property or a ton of place, then, you know, I grow things a little closer together. So what Israel's doing is doing a zigzag pattern, which means like a Z. And he's putting the plugs in the ground right here. So the number one reason I would say people are unsuccessful at growing in the ground, first of all, no nutrient value to speak of. Very little nutrients in the soil. You're growing at the beach. So you got to have good quality soil. Remember, you are what you eat that it eats. So if there's no nutrient value in the soil, then there's very little nutrient value in what you eat. Your spinach and your lettuces, your chard, your cucumbers. So now we've planted it and it looks great, but that's not where we stop. The next thing we do is we have to put a covering over this. This method is called lasagna. Why is it called lasagna? Well, we got the ground, then we have cardboard, then we have soil, then we have plugs, and then now we're using mulch from an oak tree. Not the red and blue stuff from like Lowe's or Home Depot that has dye in it. This is natural stuff. This actually was called the Back to Eden method because a gentleman named Paul, I'm not going to say he invented it, but he became famous for it because he was a farmer and he moved from California to the Northwest. And he had a 200-foot well. And the well, and he was tilling the ground, because that's what you do as a farmer, you till. He was tilling the ground, he's hitting all these rocks. And when he was hitting these rocks, he's making like these memorials. And then 3 days after he bought his farm, his well dried up. I mean, this guy thought, oh my goodness, this is the worst ever. So now, you know, he prayed the most famous prayer that's ever been prayed. You want to know what it is? Help! Okay, that's a good prayer. Really, this is his story. What happened was his farm lined right up next to a forest. So he was walking in the forest, kind of praying, it's a drought. I have no well. What am I? He put all of his money into this place to retire, you know, and then he said, this is what he said. He said the Lord spoke to him and said something he'd never heard before in his life, which was, you removed my covering. Now think about that saying. That's a little bit different. He had never in the history of ever growing, ever heard anybody talk about that. Well, think about it. If you go out in your yard, what's the covering in your yard? It's grass. The only thing that doesn't have a covering is like the desert where nothing grows. So then he's in a forest and there's a drought in the forest, but when he looks down, all the leaves are crunchy, dead sticks. But when he dug down underneath those leaves and sticks, it was the most beautiful, black, moist soil he had ever seen. So when all those leaves and trees and even animals that died and everything built this layer up, it actually was protection or a covering for which is the most important thing, which is the topsoil. And it created a microorganism highway, a beneficial bacteria and all the things you need to grow. So then he realized, I've been doing it all wrong. He went back to his farm and then had the tree companies that trim all the branches, they mulch it. Then they have to pay to get it dumped at a dump, just so you know. He had them dump hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dump loads of mulch 4 feet deep on his property. He changed everything. Now, of course, he has hundreds and hundreds of chickens and everything. So he created a whole new way to let that mulch sit and turn it into compost. And he put a covering. So we have the organic soil, all the nutrients in the soil. Now we cover it with mulch so we protect our topsoil. So now the most important thing is proper soil, proper nutrients in the soil. But the biggest problem other than that, that's enough to stop any garden. But the biggest problem after that is water. Too much water, not enough water. Too much water, not enough water. Okay, so how do you know? I'm teaching as a new guy. I'm not teaching as someone, even someone that has a degree in this. Because a lot of people that have degrees have never done anything. So I'm talking about a new guy that's just said, hey, let me put a seed in the ground and see what happens. So then here in Florida, the problem we have, because it's so hot in the summer, you go 2 or 3 days without water and you could lose everything. You could lose your entire crop. So we use what's called drip irrigation. Now, this is a sprayer. This is not drip irrigation, but drip irrigation would be a tube with little holes in it. And when you turn it on, it drips into the soil. But you need water. So we put this right down the middle. So you can see when the water comes out, it goes down each side. And then the next thing we do is we use a timer. Why? You're busy people. You got a life. You're going to forget. Right? So now a timer, this hooks up to a water hose. This is like $25. Nothing. You hook a water hose up to it and you set the timer. You always water at dusk and dawn, never in the middle of the day. You never water in the middle of the day, because if you water in the middle of the day, that water gets on your leaves and the sun cooks it and it burns your leaves and everything. So you never water in the middle of the day. So now I turn this on. Let's say I turn this on for 30 minutes. Then it waters in the morning. But it's still, how do I know? How do I really know? Now, you talk to an old farmer and said, how do you know if there's enough moisture in the soil? He'll stick his finger up. Now, if he doesn't like you, it could be a different one. I don't know, but it just sounds funny. But he'll stick his finger in the soil. I wasn't at that point. So we use what's called a moisture meter. I actually call it a cheat sheet because it has moist, light, and pH. So on moist, it says dry is red, green is moist, or green is right where you want it, and then blue is too wet. So when I stick this down in the soil right now, Justin, just take a look at that. Is that red, green, or blue?
It's on the very beginning of the green.
It's on the very beginning of the green. So even though that soil's brand new, it's great. So now we come over here to this, and I stick this in here. What does it say? It's right in the middle. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So now I got trees. So now right here, that's right in the middle. This tree, just a little dry. So what is this? It's a little cheat sheet. This can be used in a flower pot, can be used in a garden. So now let's say I put this here and let's just say it's dry. Then I just extend the amount of time my water runs. Or I run it at dusk and dawn, because this one can run 2 times. Now, if you want to get fancy, they have ones with rain sensors and all this stuff, but I'm just keeping it simple. So now you're kind of automated. And so this is called Back to Eden, no-till lasagna gardening. But another thing is, when all of this comes up like okra and it comes up and it's mature, and let's say that season's over, then we don't pull the okra and the roots all out of the ground. We cut it at the bottom and we let the roots die and decay. Because in nature, is that how it works? Something grows and you pull it up? Nothing's pulled up. It all stays in the soil. So as something dies, it creates, all the microbes and the beneficial bacteria. The whole secret to growing is soil health and water. And obviously you got to have sun. But this is Back to Eden Grow Method, lasagna gardening. I love it. I've only done this. I've never done anything else. I've never grown any other way. And I will tell you, it works. Now so we do a lot of things. Like we grow moringa here, moringa trees, and we cut them and we grind up the branches and we implement it into the soil. Everything we do is about soil health. And now, obviously, you'll get weeds and stuff in here, but they're easy to come out. Now, this cardboard will disappear in about 2 months. I mean, it'll just rot. And so anyways, any questions on Back to Eden, no-till, lasagna gardening? No. Okay, great question. Next season. Now it's next season. No, it's the roots have already went down into the other soil and stuff. So all I'm going to do is usually make a line in the middle. You know, to replant something, I'll take like a little rake or something. I'll make a line in the middle. And if I need to add anything or a little bit more soil or something, if the rain had washed a lot of it away, I would just go right down the middle, move the bark out, the mulch out of the way, and I would just plant right in the middle of it. Isn't that cool? Yeah. How do you control the moisture? Florida's wild like that. Well, we have a lot of moisture, but we have a lot of sun. So the mulch or the bark will actually hold the moisture in the soil, and that's what you want. You actually want that. Remember in Florida, and this works anywhere, you have a lot. When that sun comes out full board, it's going to suck the moisture out of everything. So you really want the moisture. And then once again, you check your moisture meter. Let's say your moisture meter is pegging wet. Well, you don't want your water system on because you could get root rot if it's just too much. You just got to keep it simple. And you look at the leaves. Look at the color of this Malabar. You can also look at the leaves and kind of see how things are.